Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com. First, with a shout-out to Stefan Rudolph on the occasion of his birthday. Happy birthday, Stefan, and thank you for putting up with me and watching all these videos. Also, my best to Felix, your son, and Kristen, who got in touch with me and asked me to give you this birthday greeting. You're a lucky guy, Stefan. You really are. So happy birthday. Enjoy the day. I wanted to give a little chat about a miniature masterpiece that was suggested by one of you commentators, by Augustin Barrios, his guitar miniature Las Abejas, the Bees, one of his most famous pieces. But first, a little chat about both the instrument and the composer. Now, classical guitar music is a universe all by itself, a huge universe. There are billions of guitarists. I know. They all make recordings. They all contain the same music. They all want me to review them. I get dozens and dozens of solicitations every month from guitarists talking about their wonderful new guitar CD. And once in a while I will do one. I have to be honest, the guitar is not an instrument in which I have a great deal of interest. I find it extraordinarily limited in both its range and expressive potential. I really do, compared to like other things. I mean, I'm not that interested in the contrabassoon either, but the guitar, of course, is enormously popular. I find it most effective as an instrument used to accompany singers, which is what it was originally invented to do. Classical guitar is kind of like classical lieder. It suffers from an inferiority complex because the guitar is a popular instrument, just as songs are popular media, and the people who play classical guitar tend to have a lot of attitude. And, I find the whole thing vaguely off-putting, frankly, but there is marvelous, marvelous music written for the guitar. One of the best composers of the 20th century or 21st century, Leo Brouwer, writes primarily for the guitar, and I love his music. So my relationship with the guitar, and possibly yours too, unless you're a guitarist, will probably be one in which you follow the composer. If you like the music the composer writes and he writes for the guitar, then you'll like his guitar music. That's how I do it anyway. I mean, I'm totally composer driven, and that works quite well for me. Augustin Barrios, who wrote Las Abejas, is widely considered one of the very, very greatest composers for the guitar, possibly the greatest, although, of course, that kind of appellation is usually as silly as it sounds. He was born in Paraguay around, I think, 1885, and he died in 1944, so he lived to be about 59. He was a traveling virtuoso. He billed himself as the Paganini of the guitar. Never mind the fact that Paganini himself was the Paganini of the guitar. He wrote tons of guitar music, some of which is very, very good. And I'd like to do a talk about some of it if I get a chance, because Paganini is a very underrated composer. But we're talking about Barrios. Almost all of his music, and there are about 5 or 6 CDs worth of it, consists of miniatures. Little guitar miniatures. He was a big fan of Chopin, and I think maybe that's where he got some of his inspiration to write, lots and lots and lots of miniatures. But like so many virtuosi, he was kind of a schlep when it came to writing his music down. He only published 9 pieces of music in his lifetime out of the dozens and dozens and dozens that exist. And he couldn't be bothered to do it most of the time. So his music exists either in manuscript copies or in recordings, because he made lots of recordings in the very earliest days of recordings, from the 19-teens to the late 1920s, acoustic recordings. And so much of his music had to be transcribed from those. And of course, being a virtuoso who wrote music for his own use, he changed everything every time he played it. So it's a bit of a mess. It is a bit of a mess, but the music is delightful. I mean, they're all just these charming, fabulous little miniatures and dances and, mixing folkloric and classical influences. And, he was an original. And the funny thing about it, really, is that in a way he encapsulates all of the neurosis about the classical guitar, because his music has that kind of eclecticism. It doesn't have any boundaries. It makes no distinction between that which is classical and that which is popular. And I think that's what the best guitar music does, quite frankly, because that's how the instrument appears to us in our culture. It straddles the two worlds and does it very, very effectively. So anyway, one of you very kind commentators, you can go back and find out who it was, I'm not getting into that, suggested as a miniature masterpiece his delicious little etude, which is sort of what it is. It's an arpeggio study in perpetual motion at a dizzying speed called Las Abejas, the bees. Now, it wasn't called the bees because it's supposed to sound like bees. It was called the bees because one of his colleagues locked him in a room and wouldn't let him out until he wrote some of his music down. And so he called it the bees to demonstrate that he was locked in that room as busy as a bee, writing down his guitar music. But it really is a lovely little piece, and I have it here performed on Brilliant Classics by Cristiano Porqueddu. I've got a bunch of performances of it, but this one fits quite well within our 2-minute miniature masterpiece time frame. And this is a 6 CD set of the complete Barrios guitar music. It's a lot of Barrios when you consider that most of his pieces are, 2 to 3 minutes long. But really, it's a fine set, and the music is so enjoyable. I mean, it really is just delightfully enjoyable. Whether you pay attention to it, there's always something sort of ear-catching to hear, or you can just put it on as background music. It works very well that way, too. Here is The Bees by Augustin Barrios. Charming, delightful, and a miniature masterpiece, if ever there was one. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to play a little guitar music. I mean, I've done some Leo Brouwer previously, and I do plan to do more. I mean, it's just one of the endless list of things we have to cover in this perpetually expanding universe of classical music. But keep on listening, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.